welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be making poor man burnt ends made out of chuck roast. So with the cost of protein on the rise, and in particular the cost of briskets, given how popular it is to do through the summertime, you can turn to cuts like chuck roast steaks here as a means of trying to recreate the burnt ends that you can get from the point, but do it at a much more affordable price point. So if you're into that kind of thing, stick with us and we'll show you how to get it done on the smoker. So the first thing we're doing is just starting out with a thick chuck roast. And this is about 1.5 inches thick, and we're just gonna carve this into cubes. So you'll see some recipes out there where you actually start to roast the chuck roast in its entirety before cutting into it. And the reason I suggest that you actually cut into it first is we'll be able to get more seasoning and build up that bark over all of the edges of our burnt ends here, because that's what I love about burnt ends the most, is that bark texture. So what we're gonna do, just take our knife and we're gonna carve this roast into cubes that are about 1 inch to 1.5 inches thick. Perfect. Now we'll just put these over on their sides and then cut them into cubes. And this doesn't have to be perfect. Burnt ends aren't perfect themselves, but if you try and keep the size of these cubes similar, hopefully that'll just help them cook all at the same time. So you want beautiful little cubes like that. You can see there's really nice marbling and connective tissue in there that we're gonna render down over a nice low and slow cook here. So the next step, we've gotta make our rub. So for the rub, we're going in with cracked black pepper, and this is a coarse grind. We'll go in with equal parts granulated garlic and equal parts paprika. And that's just gonna add a really nice color to these burnt ends. And now lastly, we'll add a little bit of salt. Do this to taste. I'm gonna add about half as much salt as we added pepper. Perfect. Now, get that sealed up here. And we'll just shake this. Now what we're gonna do here is, as opposed to using mustard as a binder, I know some people don't like the taste of mustard, so we're gonna switch it up and use some hot sauce. And this is just gonna help the rub actually adhere to these guys. So I'll just get this all over. This is also gonna add a nice little bite to this too. Now we're just gonna come in with our rub and sprinkle that nice and evenly over the top. It's a little windy out here, so some of that rub's moving around. Perfect. Get this mixed up, flip it over onto the other side, and we'll do the same. Perfect. Now we ended up making more rub than we used, so what you can do, given that we made it in a mason jar, just seal it up like that, and that will store perfectly in your pantry for months. Just use it on your next cook. All right, just make sure that we've got as much of this rub onto the beef here as we can. So with the sriracha, there's also a little bit of sugar in that. So over the course of our smoke, that'll burn a little bit and create a really nice black bark, or help to create that really nice black bark. I normally don't use sugar in any of our rubs, as you've seen here, but with that in the sauce, we'll get that dynamic coming out here, which is great. So now we've got one of our racks here from the smoker. We're just gonna put these evenly spaced out. You wanna make sure you're not crowding your rack, because you want smoke and airflow and heat to get all the way around these. You don't want any of these pieces touching each other. Perfect. So for today's cook, we're gonna be using the Bradley vertical smoker, and we're using the professional grade version, the P10 model. So let's get our burnt ends here into the smoker. So we're just using 2 of the racks that come with this smoker. We'll get them positioned in there right in the middle. Now I'll show you how to get this guy fired up. So the Bradley smoker here is fired with these little wood biscuits. We're using apple flavor today. So you can control your cook time, and you can control the amount of smoke time that you're actually getting in this. So they're 2 separate controls. So we're gonna set our cook time here to 4 hours. Then we're gonna set our smoke time to 2 hours. And that's the point at which we're gonna wrap this in foil. So we're really only gonna get smoke for the first 2 hours here. So we wanna save those biscuits, and otherwise we'll get electric heat for the rest of the cook. And then lastly, we're gonna set the temperature of our cook to 225. So now we're just gonna sit back and we'll come back in 45 minutes to spritz these guys. Now we'll get the water pan in here, and this will just help maintain humidity and moisture over the course of our cook. So as you can tell, I've been nerding out with this grill a little bit over the last month as I've just been getting some practice cooks under it. If you want to see a full review of this, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll do a gear review on the P10. But it's pretty cool. The smoke here is actually fired with applewood biscuits, and then the temp is actually controlled with an electric element. And what's great about that is you actually have the cook chamber heated with electricity. And so you can add smoke on top for as long or as little as you want to adjust the smokiness. Or let's say you're doing a brisket and you've wrapped your brisket and you know your protein's not going to absorb any more smoke. You no longer have to waste any biscuits. This actually lets you control both of those independently, which is a really cool feature. Anyway, back to the cook. So we're 2 hours into our cook, we're just gonna check on our burn ends. So first thing we're looking for is just color. These are coming along really nicely. Color's looking great. Now, in order to maintain moisture, we're gonna wanna use a spritz. So this is just a simple concoction. It's half apple cider vinegar, half water. And we're just gonna pull this out and spritz both sides. So we'll get the tops, then we'll get the bottoms. Do the same for the other ones. Perfect, get that back in here. Now the other thing we're gonna do is get a little tub of beef tallow in here. So that beef tallow, we actually made ourselves from brisket trimmings. So I'll drop a link in the description down below if you wanna see how to save all that trimmings that you normally throw away and actually make tallow out of it. We're gonna get it in here, get it melted down, because when we wrap these guys, we're gonna use some of that beef tallow just to maintain moisture and add another layer of flavor and get that beefy intensity that we're looking for in these burn ends. All right, we're at the 2 hour mark, so we're gonna check in here on these burn ends, take them out, just look at that. Really nice, dark, rich color. So we're gonna get these guys down onto some heavy duty foil, and we've actually gone with 2 sheets of foil because we're gonna add a little bit of broth and some barbecue sauce and that beef tallow. And if anything punctures this foil, it's always good to have a second sheet just so you don't make a mess. Now this is phenomenal. Just look at this. Really nice bark, but you can see as you squeeze this, like it's still a little bit chewy. This isn't tender. So there's still intermuscular tissue and connective tissue here that we need to render down. Wow, that's spicy. You can really taste the pepper, the forwardness of the pepper and the rub. Great. So next up, we're gonna take a 1/4 cup of beef broth here. Then we're gonna add the same amount of barbecue sauce. Now this is just gonna thin out the barbecue sauce just to make it a little bit more liquid, maintain moisture in our burnt ends through the next part of the cook here. So get the lid on, shake that up, and now we'll get our sauce on. Perfect. Now the last step is that beef tallow that's been smoking away in there. You can see it's liquefied, but it's also got a nice smoke flavor to it here now too. So we're gonna add in half of that. Now we'll get this wrapped up. So now we're gonna put these back in the pit until all that intermuscular tissue and fat has fully rendered out, and these are gonna be pull apart tender. So we're at the 6 hour mark on our cook here. Time to take these guys off. So this whole cook ended up taking about 6 hours. At the 4 hour mark, we upped the temp of the smoker from 225 to 275 and left these on covered in foil. So these have been steaming away. It's almost been braising away in that beef tallow, the beef broth, the barbecue sauce. So I can't wait to see just how tender these poor man burn ends are. Oh, just look at that. So we're gonna get these burn ends out here, get these set down, They have an absolutely beautiful bark on them. Just like really, really nice black exterior bark. And just look how tender these are. Gonna give this a taste test. Are you kidding me? I've gotta say these are good. They're not quite as good as actual burnt ends. I mean, the point in a brisket, it's just so fatty, so well marbled. And over the course of, say, a 10-hour low and slow cook on a brisket, but this is a pretty close second. And you know, I'm not gonna complain. This is something I'm gonna add to the regular repertoire, that's for sure. Just absolutely incredible. So there you have it, folks. If you're looking to save a few dollars, as opposed to making burnt ends with the point of a brisket, why don't you just try a chuck roast? Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, consider giving it a like below, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.